Welcome back to Caribbean Times News and a series of medical innovations on the horizon, including what appears to be a significant breakthrough in the race for a COVID-19 vaccine. Earlier, I spoke with Dr. Will Morris, the Executive Medical Director of Cleveland Clinic Innovations, about the potential vaccine and other medical breakthroughs to come. Dr. Morris, thank you for joining us.
Absolute pleasure.
Now, American drug maker Pfizer and a German partner say that they may have an effective vaccine. This is still early data, but what do you make of this news?
Yeah, well, I think, twofold. One is it's absolute tremendous innovation. When you think about the time cycle traditionally, when developing a vaccine and how it can get to market, these are years, and we're talking months. So just in and of itself, that's something to say, wow, when this not just the nation, but when the globe truly comes together and focuses on a call to action. It's amazing what we all can do as human beings when, we have a clear North Star. Now, with that said, while the news is very, very promising and exciting, I think, still it's sobering to remind us that we still need to do all of the proper prevention, right? We don't yet have vaccinated patients. So we need to continue with social distancing, washing hands, doing appropriate masking. We need to take this onus in and of ourselves. So it's a far cry to say mission accomplished.
So what is the timeline for getting a vaccine to people in the U.S., the Caribbean, and around the world?
Yeah, well, I think that's a phenomenal question. And then who gets it, right? So there's a logistic challenge. How do you distribute this vaccine to all of the patients? Number two is, well, who is at risk first? Who should get this vaccine first? And how do we manage it? And then how do we, when other vaccine companies come up online, is how do we actually orchestrate, all of those pieces? I think that's going to take an unbelievable degree of cooperation between nations and public health officials to really drive this. So again, there's so many variables and pieces that I think we need to kind of be cognizant of, and it's going to take time.
And what do you say to people who might be skeptical about either the safety or the timing of this vaccine?
Yeah, I think, Liz, as a physician, the science and the data speaks for itself. And so we need to be healthy skeptics. And I think anyone, one need not be a nurse or a physician to be a healthy skeptic. We should understand what the performance is. And we need to trust the science to scientists and trust the data to those who are producing it. And only then do we say, yes, this is actually in the best interest for the public good. And the safety profile, the efficacy, meaning how well it performs, is one that warrants vaccination. It should not be politicized. COVID is not a political issue. It's a global issue, and the science needs to be the overwhelming North Star.
And right now we are seeing COVID rates on the rise all around the world. Could this vaccine ultimately end the pandemic? And if so, when would that be?
Yeah, that's a great question. Certainly this third wave that at least we're experiencing in the United States is not going to be mitigated by the vaccine, right? Just the presence of having a vaccine, COVID doesn't care, right? It's affecting patients every single day. We're seeing the numbers rise, and that's why it's so important for us to not lose, guard around just the simple preventative measures. How the vaccine performs both for 2021 is still be determined. You need to have what's called herd immunity, right? Enough patients who have protection to protect those who perhaps can't get the vaccine or who didn't get it. And so that's a volume game, right? We need to get enough people vaccinated, and the vaccine itself needs to be one that protects. The questions on the table are going to be then, does the immunity wane over time? I lucked out with having coronavirus back in March. I can tell you firsthand, I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. It is a very, very serious illness. But the question that I have is, just by having immunity, it doesn't confer lifelong risks. So it could be like the annual flu vaccine, and where this is part of the new normal that we need to now do these public health measures to prevent both coronavirus, but there's seasonal flu and there's other world pandemics that we need to be cognizant of.
So many questions still out
Yes.
there, but it is good news. And turning to some other medical breakthroughs that are on the horizon, the Cleveland Clinic has unveiled its top 10 medical innovations for 2021. And one of those innovations could aid in the fight against prostate cancer, which is actually the second leading cause of cancer death among men in the U.S. We just saw Al Roker from NBC's Today Show recently revealing his prostate cancer diagnosis. So tell us about this potential new treatment.
Yeah, I mean, so there's a lot of interesting therapeutics. If you look at the list, I think, rather than looking at the specifics, if I had to say there's one core hypothesis, it's evidence and science, and that's how we chose these. These are new innovations, new novel drug targets that bring new treatment to bear for patients who otherwise didn't have an option. And so whether it be the novel therapy in prostate cancer, another one around migraine prophylaxis, and then multiple sclerosis. These are exciting new kind of breakthrough therapies that offer new treatment options for patients at risk, B, help decrease the mortality, morbidity, the impact of these terrible, terrible diseases, and then 3 is bring a quality of life that I think is really, really important for patients. So if I look at the number one, where we talked about potential gene cures, which we don't really use that often in medicine, around sickle cell disease or thalassemia, right? These are anemias. These are mind-boggling ideas where an intervention actually cures it. It's not just maintaining a chronic disease, but it actually is fundamentally curing it. That is absolutely mind-boggling, to think about, and it is so exciting to see these new therapies and these collaborations come together to bring what I think is the most important thing as humans. What we do is try to serve one another and keep each other healthy.
So exciting and bringing so much hope to so many people. And I found that another one of your top 10 innovations, so interesting, telemedicine. I mean, with the pandemic, we've seen a huge increase in this kind of virtual care. Do you think that telemedicine is going to basically be the way of the future?
I think it's a new tool in the toolbox. Much like we're communicating over Skype, a lot of the therapies that we can do can be over telemedicine. And so why we chose the telemedicine was appropriate was in healthcare, we get stuck in a rut. We do a lot of things because we've always done it some way. And what COVID forced us to do as providers to question the very nature of what does it mean to actually interact and actually manage, evaluate, and treat a patient. It changed our biases. We are very creatures of habit as physicians and nurses and caregivers. And so that allowed us to challenge that. And actually, to our surprise, patients actually enjoyed it, right? You don't want to come in necessarily to a hospital or to a clinic to be exposed if it's an annual visit or if it's a mental health visit. So how do we meet the patient where they are, as opposed to the patient having to meet us as clinicians? And so I think it's changed the way we think. It's changed also the policies that have been in barriers for these types of telemedicine visits. So especially in the United States, where each state has different laws and different payment, it set up all of these artificial barriers. And with COVID, we were able to move that away and focus on the one thing that's important, which is the patient. And I think that by having that clarity of purpose, it allows unbelievable innovation and unbelievable new aspects. So if your original question is, will this be the new normal? Will all medicine be through telemedicine? Well, certainly not. There's certain things that we can't do, obviously. But I think it's going to be a powerful tool that allows us to address health disparities, inequities, and just frankly, barriers to access healthcare.
Exactly. For underserved communities in the U.S. and in developing countries like the Caribbean, it looks like telemedicine is something that's going to be a really important tool in expanding that healthcare service, right?
You're exactly right. Absolutely right.
Well, Dr. Morris, thank you so much for joining us. We have learned so much today, and I so appreciate it.
I absolutely enjoyed the conversation, and be safe, and thank you for this opportunity.
Hello, I'm Alicia Davis. Thanks for watching the Caribbean Times News on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with all the latest news and videos we're putting out, you can click on the subscribe button. See you soon.